Welcome to Porto. The hotel we stayed at was one of the nicest we stayed at during this whole Europe trip. The lobby smelled really fresh and they even gave us free Portuguese tarts at check-in, so that was nice. The wallpaper is so nice. It's like this pastel green colour, which I'm not sure if it comes across in the video. Let's look at the view if we have one. I'm actually not too sure how this window works. This is so nice and cozy. The first thing we did after check-in was to get some Portuguese chicken. We were both starving and this place was fantastic. It was just, your classic Portuguese chicken with chips. The chips were so yum as well. After dinner, we wanted to go to the famous bookstore, the one that J.K. Rowling supposedly loved to visit. But in that district, there are so many other bookstores. I was so overwhelmed because we just didn't have time to go in all of them. Unfortunately though, when we got to the bookstore, we found out that it was just about to close, so we had to come back the next day. But the timing worked out okay because the next day was its 100th anniversary. To treat ourselves, we got some Portuguese tarts, and look how happy the chefs look. It was so delicious. I think it's one of the best tarts I've had to this day, and we had a lot of tarts on this trip. That Portuguese tart was probably the best tart I've ever had in my life. So full of flavour and texture. It was nice and gooey and extremely hot, so you have to be careful when you're eating these tarts, but that was absolutely delightful. And it kind of compensated for the disappointment of missing out on tickets to the bookstore, but hopefully we'll go tomorrow. After the tarts, we walked off our meal by taking a stroll around Porto, and I think this is the most amazing city to walk around at night because there's always people playing music, and I'll just let you experience it for yourself. And then we went to check out, although we didn't buy anything, the fancy McDonald's with chandeliers. I've never seen a McDonald's this fancy before. In the hotel now, it's currently around 9 p.m. and I'm having the best time in Porto so far. I think it's one of my favorite cities that I visited in Europe so far. And I don't know if it's because we're visiting off-peak, so there's barely any people, but just enough crowds so that you feel safe walking around at night, or if it's because of the lovely warm-ish weather, at least by European standards. At night, walking along the river, there's a lot of people busking, singing. It just feels so lively, and it doesn't feel too crazy though. I feel like there are some cities we've been to in the past few weeks that were just too hectic at night. I'm nibbling on some complimentary chocolate at the moment. So on this trip, we've mostly been staying in budget hotels, which I'm super grateful that we even get to stay in hotels in the first place and that we don't have to stay in a hostel, because if I was traveling by myself, I'll probably have to stay in a hostel just for cost reasons, obviously. But next day we took the train a lot, and for some reason I took a lot of clips of train stations here because they were so clean, which I was somewhat surprised by because usually train stations aren't that clean. This one was nice and clean, and they even played music on the loudspeakers. We had a healthy breakfast. Originally we were going to have something less healthy, but that place was closed, so thankfully we did get something healthy. And then we got this pork bun, which was decidedly not that healthy, but we needed that fuel for the giant line for the beautiful bookstore that we were about to visit. This was the famous bookstore that we were going to go to the night before, but it was closed. So we ended up waiting in line for ages before finally getting in, and it was indeed the most beautiful bookstore I've ever seen. So that is true. It is very beautiful. But if you're going to take photos inside, just be aware there is so many people that you're probably not going to get a good photo of yourself, as I experienced here. You can see me just awkwardly struggling with the crowds. Aside from taking photos, I promise I also did browse the bookstore, and I spotted some gorgeous editions. Such a gorgeous edition of White Noise. I'm like seriously contemplating buying this along with this edition, beautiful edition of Animal Farm, but it's like 20 euros, so I'm not gonna get it. Look at this edition of 1984. Came back to our hotel for a quick rest stop to put our books back, and now we're heading to the other side of the river where we went last night just to see the view in the daytime, and I think it just stopped raining, which is great. It's still raining. It stopped for like a minute and then it resumed again. The weather here is actually quite volatile, like more volatile than I was expecting. I think this is the landscape straight out of a fairy tale. Yeah, even though it was pouring, it just felt very peaceful. We ended up going to the beach, which just had giant waves. I don't know if it's because of the weather or if it's usually like this. We also found a cafe that was just facing the ocean. It had giant floor-to-ceiling windows. Imagine how nice this place would look when the weather is nice. Anyways, we ordered ourselves some smoothies and sat by the window watching the very brave few people who were standing by the waves.
Put it back on. Oh wow!
For dinner, we actually wanted some seafood, but we got really hungry on our way there, so we ended up snacking on Pizza Hut. And this Pizza Hut has the best view I've ever seen. I don't think I've ever seen a Pizza Hut that had an ocean view, so that was very much appreciated for this quick dinner. And then here is our actual dinner, which is fish and potatoes and some vegetables. It was so delicious. The fish was extremely fresh. So we just got back to our hotel room. It's currently around 9 p.m. and we just took the train/tram back. I'm actually not sure if Porto has a train or if it's considered a tram, because part of it is underground, but a large part of the route is overground and it's structured like a tram path, and the speed isn't exactly the same as a train, so I'm not too sure what it's classified as. I just want to show you the books we picked up at the famous bookstore, which is considered the most beautiful bookstore in the world. They're both by George Orwell. The first book is Animal Farm. Gorgeous cover, which if you read the book, I think it like pretty nicely encapsulates what the book is about and the symbolism behind it. And the next book I'm so excited about. The only problem is I don't have much luggage on the way back to Australia, so I think I'm gonna have to leave this with Felix back in the UK. But it is this gorgeous edition of George Orwell's 1984, which is one of my favorite books. And look how intricate this design is. It was quite expensive. I think this was like 20 euros, though it is standard for a hardback. And since it was the anniversary of this bookstore, they also gave us a little pamphlet thing that contained a bunch of short essays and reflections about different literary figures and important people in the city and their thoughts on books, literature, and the bookstore itself, which is quite cool. I think this bookstore has a lot of history within the city. Tomorrow we're on our way to Lisbon. I really enjoyed Porto, but I think our trip was way too short, and I think definitely want to come back very soon.